back to WCB Jazz Vinyl and welcome to 2025. So I know this isn't my first video of the year, but it kind of feels more like a kickoff because I want to address some of the recent announcements and news that hit, call it, the jazz vinyl community. So with some specificity in this discussion, I want to address yet another Vinyl Me Please announcement that was put out this week, which could be troubling for some, could add fuel to the fire for some of the international audience. Basically, though they've announced their first new title, I have an update on the reissue of the Blue Note box set that we've all been waiting on, and there's some important announcements related to their membership. Again, more announcements. It's been kind of a crazy ride the last few months. So in addition to that, I want to talk about the OJC series and the first 5 titles that they've announced for 2025 associated with that. There's been a Jazz Dispensary Top Shelf announcement that just came out the other day. And then finally, I want to talk about a brand new release by the Vince Guaraldi trio. Basically, they're reissuing the soundtrack to the TV special Be My Valentine, Charlie Brown. So a number of topics that I want to bring to your attention in this video and provide my unfiltered thoughts. So before we dive in, as always, you can go ahead and hit like if you'd like. You can hit subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at what_can_brown. All right, so let's take these issues in turn, starting with Vinyl Me Please. Now, if you remember a couple of months ago, I made a video about a Vinyl Me Please announcement, and kind of the biggest takeaway is that they were no longer going to service international members' memberships. They were going to try to phase all of those out. So that was kind of the biggest change to their model, and here, this may even be a bigger change to their model than that. So basically, going forward, Vinyl Me Please is no longer going to be releasing new records of the month according to those different tracks, classic track, right, etc., essentials, like all of those different sort of genre-focused tracks. They're no longer going to be doing records of the month. So what does that mean for members? Is this still a subscription service? Well, basically, they're going to continue to release exclusives to their store. It's just that those exclusives are not going to be formatted as a record of the month corresponding with the different tracks. Instead, they're going to focus on between 2 and 3 new releases total each month. So basically, forget about the genre-focused tracks. They're doing a couple of new releases per month. Could be any genre. As a member, it sounds like you will essentially choose which title that you want on a monthly basis. So you're still kind of getting a cadence of a monthly release, but you choose which title you want, whether it's one of those new store exclusives that they've just launched, or you can choose from an expanded list of titles that were previously available in swaps. Okay. Now, if you don't select anything, this is personally where I think it gets a little dicey. They're going to pick something for you based on your purchase history and or wish list. So, in my opinion, and me as a member, at least so far, I'm still a member, I'm going to want to be diligent about what it is that they might be choosing for me before shipping. So in the last couple of months, I would say that I've been swapping my, essentially assigned record for store credit more often than not. And my guess is that there's a lot of people out there doing this, and I think that could be one of the reasons why they sort of changed the model. I think there's a lot of people that are carrying some store credit along, and maybe they're trying to find a reason for people not to necessarily just always go for store credit, but instead give them a reason to find something that they actually have in order to in order to actually be providing customers a physical item, right? Rather than us just carrying store credit and waiting for expensive box sets or something. So the other thing that Vinyl Me Please is doing is they're launching a new membership tier, which they are calling the Crate, C-R-A-T-E. And what this new membership tier offers is essentially a membership model without requiring that people purchase a record every month. So what it is they give you a 10% off discount in the store. You still get access to exclusives in terms of the ability to purchase, but it just does not include a monthly record. So what you're paying for with this tier is access to discounted titles, free shipping, etc. But you're effectively only picking the titles that you want throughout the year with no obligation. The price for this membership is $119. So if I'm thinking about that, it's $10 a month, And with that $10 a month, you have the ability to buy titles at a membership rate. But here's the problem: is that if you're only planning on getting one record, I think the non-member price is only like $7 more per title. So if you're only thinking you're going to buy one per month, does it really make sense to go for the crate, or should you just not be a member whatsoever and buy titles as they become available, but then you don't have access to the exclusives? I don't know. I'm gonna leave that for people to kind of do the math on and figure out. So otherwise, what do members get, right? If you're going to be a member, well, you'll get access to exclusives 48 hours ahead of non-members. You can still swap for store credit on really anything, like each month if you don't want anything that they have. And a few other details. They're saying that people can actually opt to convert their current membership to the crate membership starting in February. They're also adding a temporary exemption from what previously were restrictions about when you could cancel, like when within the term of your membership could you decide to cancel. I think they're relaxing that temporarily. So here's the thing. These changes are still a little bit cumbersome or like confusing. And I don't think so far that they've done a great job communicating exactly how this is going to play out, but they are taking, they're offering like a Q&A in their, I believe it's, in their Discord channel. I think it's Discord, or is it Instagram channel that they have. And they're trying to address people's concerns. I don't really know how to interpret a lot of this. I am still a member. I am going to make sure that I'm not accidentally sent records that I don't want. Do there continue to be releases by Vinyl Me Please that I'm interested in and I want to have access to? Yeah. But, whether or not I choose to continue with my membership will be based on my mindset when my membership lapses and I have the ability to renew. So a couple of updates specific to perhaps, outside of these changes to the membership model, which, by the way, continues to not be available to the international audience. But a few updates specific to some of their releases. So one is that the Blue Note box set that they are repressing. So they put this Blue Note box set out several years ago. It was in high demand. It sold out, and copies go for a lot of money on Discogs. Well, they decided to repress that box set. It was supposed to be put out a long time ago. I want to say that I pre-ordered this maybe a year ago. Maybe it was less than a year ago, but it's been a while. They've continually delayed it. The latest is that all of the records have been pressed. I believe it's been kitted. I believe that they're en route from the manufacturer to Vinyl Me Please, and they're expected to ship to customers in January. So that is the latest update that we have. And the fact that they just made that update and said they're on track for shipping in January, and we're in January, that gives me some confidence that all is well finally, and that we're actually going to be able to get our deliveries of this Blue Note box set. So that's encouraging, and certainly rest assured that even though this was originally put out several years ago, as soon as I get my copy in, because this is the first time I've had the ability to buy it, I will be reviewing it once that box set comes in. All right, so I want to address sort of one final topic related to Vinyl Me Please. So I mentioned that they're going to be putting out between 2 and 3 exclusive titles every month that members are going to be able to choose from, and they've announced just one so far. But that one title is kind of interesting for those of us in this kind of jazz vinyl space, because it is We Insist, Max Roach's Freedom Now Suite. This happens to be an original pressing and obviously not what they are about to put out. So, what to say about this release? First of all, it is a absolutely stellar album just on its own. As far as the format of this, it is going to be an all analog mastering cut from the original mono tapes by Ryan K. Smith. It's going to have a tip-on jacket. It's going to be pressed in a quantity of 2,000, and it's going to be manufactured at GZ. So the pre-order for this album is open right now. For members, it's going to be $42 with free shipping. For non-members, it's $49 plus shipping. So there is some benefit, I suppose, here maybe to being a member. Pre-orders are only open to U.S. customers, international buyers can purchase this, but only once the item is in stock. At 2,000 copies, I wouldn't worry about this one selling out. I actually think that as much as us jazz fans really, love this album and sort of, love the idea that it's going to be available. I just don't know about the cross-genre appeal, and so I have a feeling that there are still going to be copies once after the pre-order's done. So I want to talk about this album though in terms of like, do we need this pressing? So as has been, I would say, kind of common lately with Vinyl Me Please, like I don't know if it's because of their backlog or what, but they seem to be releasing albums that have recently been released by other outfits. And that's a little discouraging because I don't think that there's that many people who value specifically having the Vinyl Me Please edition just to get that obi. I don't even like the obi that they have on these. And this was actually just released 2 years ago as part of Record Store Day, or 2.5 years ago. So in 2022, there was a clear vinyl pressing associated with the April Record Store Day. That version was remastered by Bernie Grunman, and it was in stereo. So now we have a new remastering by Ryan K. Smith, and it's in mono. Incidentally, those Record Store Day copies from several years ago are still available, quite available, in fact, on Discogs, those Record Store Day editions, for as little as $15. Now, one of the reasons why they're going for only 15 is, well, partly it's been 2 years since Record Store Day, and guess what? Most Record Store Day releases do not retain their value. Their value on the day, they're valuable on the day, and then just after the day. But after that, they just go down. But apparently, there were some sonic issues with that pressing. Some background noise is what I heard, and honestly, so far I have been very underwhelmed by every repressing of a Candid label release. Like I haven't heard one that I've been wowed by. So I suppose that there's perhaps something here, something to look forward to in terms of Vinyl Me Please trying to put this out. It could be a great addition, but that remains to be seen. I personally haven't determined if it's something that I'm going to pick up. All right, so a decent amount of skepticism on my part about Vinyl Me Please, but obviously I'm still a member. We'll see what happens. Let's move on to maybe more of an exciting topic, and that is the Craft Recordings Original Jazz Classics announcement. So we have their first 5 titles that they've announced for 2025, and I think that there's some good ones in here. So the first one is the incredible jazz guitar of Wes Montgomery. So this is coming out on February 28th. In stereo, incidentally. So about this album, well, it's a great lineup. You've got Tommy Flanagan, Percy Heath, and Albert Heath joining Wes Montgomery. This is really one of his classic albums, perhaps at the top, or at least among the top 3 albums, I think, that Wes Montgomery put out. Originally released in 1960 on the Riverside label, as you can see here. So Craft's website actually says that the lacquers are cut from the original tapes, and that it's an all-analog pressing by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio. So that's all well and good. However, we've heard in the past that the original masters for this release are actually damaged, which is why there hasn't been previously an all-analog reissue of this particular album. So interestingly, if you look at the press release versus what's on the website, you'll see that this was cut from a tape copy instead, but it does still qualify as an all-analog release. So I don't think that they're relying on their website. It's just that you get a little bit more information if you sort of peel back the onion. You find out they acknowledge that that the original master tapes are either lost or damaged, but they do have a tape copy that they are using for this particular release. So we'll see how it sounds. But I'm optimistic, and again, I've been wanting a decent reissue of this simply because finding an original in great shape, which is not in what I would say great shape, is just extremely difficult. Usually you have to spend a lot of money. And again, this is just such a fantastic album. So very much looking forward to that first release coming up at the end of February. So also on February 28th is an album that I was not familiar with before this announcement, and that is Joe Pass's Virtuoso. So this album was originally put out in 1973 on the Pablo label. So this is a little bit of an interesting one because it's not in the Pablo series that Acoustic Sounds is putting out. Craft just decided to go for it and include it in their OJC series. So I wonder kind of why they, decided to hold on to that one and put it out. But in any event, the lineup here is just Joe pass. So it is a solo record. So, I think on its surface, this would appear to be somewhat of a strange inclusion in the series. But of course, that could only be the case if the music wasn't great. But guess what? I mean, I previewed it. It is great music. I'd certainly say that if you're a jazz guitar appreciator, you'll especially want to hear this, even though it is solo, guitar for the entire album. I think, even for the rest of us, I think there's plenty to love about it. I'm sure it's going to sound great because of Kraft's involvement and, of course, Kevin Gray's, but also I think it's kind of known as one of Joe Pass's sort of signature albums and certainly one of his best. So, if what we get is a audiophile sounding version of this album that has a lot of sonic detail and everything, I think there's going to be a lot that is going to be able to be extracted from this album, especially because it was recorded a little bit more recently than perhaps some of the some of the 50s albums that they've been including in the OJC series so far. All right, so the third title in the OJC series coming up on March 28th is Thelonious Monk's Thelonious Himself. So this was originally released by Riverside in 1957. This is also a solo album, with the exception of the last track, which actually includes just John Coltrane and Wilbur Ware joining Thelonious Monk. So still a pretty sparse track. Brilliant album here. Really brilliant. Really sort of introspective in sound. Not as maybe choppy as some of Monk's other albums. He plays a little bit more sort of fluid, I would say. But again, it's another basically solo album. So know that going in. I think that even those folks who are, perhaps a little either dumbfounded or maybe selective in what of Monk they enjoy, I think that again, because this isn't necessarily Monk being as I don't know what the right word is, but I think choppy is the best way, right? He's not as much that. He is more, like I said, he's just more fluid, more beautiful sounding. He plays ballads here, and actually, this is not all Monk's music. He does play Around Midnight here, but there's I want to say only 3 tracks that he composed on here, and the others are sort of standards. I think to some degree, the intent of this album by Orrin Keepnews at Riverside was to introduce Monk to a broader audience. So they tried to ease people in by having him play stuff that wasn't necessarily just his music. I think again, even for those folks who aren't massive Monk fans, I do think that there's something to something you're going to like about this, and it's one that I'm looking forward to as well, just to hear what more they might be able to extract from those original master tapes. All right, so then the last two, which are very exciting, I think. So these are being put out both on April 18th. We have 2 Miles Davis albums. So the first is Walkin'. Originally put out in 1957, but actually the music was recorded in 1954. This is an example of some of those prestige dates that Bob Weinstock held back the content and released later, presumably after Miles had fulfilled his contract with Prestige and had left to go to Columbia. And obviously this was recorded before he formed that sort of classic quintet. So the lineup here includes a bigger one than you might think. So it includes Horace Silver, Kenny Clark, Percy Heath, J.J. Johnson, Lucky Thompson, and Dave Schildkraut. Really, really nice session, I would say, despite the larger format. I think you all know that I'm generally more of a fan of the smaller formats, but this sounds really good. It was very well recorded. It's not going to sound like a stodgy sort of old release that wasn't mic'd well. This does indeed sound great, and it was recorded by Rudy Van Gelder despite how early it was. So know that about Walkin'. It's a stellar release. So the second one that they're putting out is The Musings of Miles. This was originally recorded in 1955, but again, I think released a little bit later, perhaps 1956. I absolutely love this album. So I like both of these. I love this one. Much more intimate in feel. I just love the smaller format personally. And that format includes Red Garland, Oscar Pettiford, and Philly Joe Jones. This was also engineered by Rudy Van Gelder. And yeah, I think it's clear to me that OJC is prioritizing putting out Miles Davis records, as they should, and I'm really glad that they finally got to The Musings of Miles, because it really is one of my favorites. All right, so maybe all of you are completists, but I am not. So what of these titles, what of these five are essential? Well, okay, maybe like they each may be, but the one I'm most excited about out of these five is actually the West Montgomery, simply because of the lack of availability of all analog options in the past, and my copy, like I said, isn't in the best shape. But listen, I am excited for each of these. The Miles and Monk records are absolutely classics, and that Joe Pass, I think, is the sleeper of the bunch in terms of it potentially surprising us, or at least me, with its inclusion. But we'll see. We'll see how great the pressing sounds. Right? It's a more modern recording, as I said. There could indeed still be some magic in the master tape that we haven't previously heard, and the fact that it's solo guitar. I don't know. There could be some detail in there. Like when all you're hearing is guitar, there may be some like elements that really make it sing in that audiophile format. So anyway, we'll find out. All right, two more topics to get to. So this next one, also Craft Recordings related, and this is the latest Jazz Dispensary, subsidiary of Craft, right? This is their latest top shelf release of Joe Henderson's Multiple. So this happens to be original pressing. This is not obviously the top shelf. It doesn't come out yet. But it is available for pre-order now. So I think this is a fabulous inclusion in the Top Shelf series. Funnily enough, I put a post about this album just a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week and change ago, on Instagram, and about how Jazz Dispensary should include it in their series. I seriously had no idea that it was being slated for release. They ended up commenting and saying like, something along the lines of like, not that I predicted it, but basically we're on the same wavelength, which was kind of funny. So anyway, like I said, I absolutely love this album. It was originally put out in 1973. In terms of the lineup, it includes Dave Holland on bass, Jack DeJohnette on drums, and Larry Willis on electric piano and synthesizer. We also have Arthur Jenkins on both percussion, sort of auxiliary percussion, and congas. Why it's important, I think, that they included this is that there has never, ever, ever, ever been a vinyl reissue, ever. Only on CD. So this is a bit of a first. Now, it was simultaneously released in a few countries in 1973, but it's never been reissued by really anybody. This is also going to be a Kevin Gray all analog mastering from the original master tapes. And so yeah, I think, fabulous inclusion. Love this music. I love all Joe Henderson. I love all Joe Henderson on Milestone. But even amongst the fantastic albums by Joe Henderson on Milestone, this is one of my favorites even within that bunch. So something to look forward to for sure. It's likely that a lot of folks haven't heard this album except perhaps by streaming or perhaps by buying one of those CD reissues. So it could indeed be, again, a first for a lot of people to be able to own this on vinyl. And I'm just glad that Jazz Dispensary is bringing it forward. All right, so the last piece of news to bring to you today is the release of the soundtrack to Be My Valentine, Charlie Brown by the Vince Guaraldi Trio. So this is being put out by Lee Mendelson Film Productions, and I'm super excited for this. So this comes out this Friday. I happen to have a copy of this already because if you all remember, maybe a year plus ago, had the opportunity to interview two of Lee Mendelson's sons, who are currently running the company and sort of behind the release of a number of these soundtracks that have been coming out over the course of the last, call it a year and change, right? So there was, they put out. Basically, Craft Recordings put out It's a Great Pumpkin. They put out the Christmas special as well, and each of the episodes, focused on Election Day, Thanksgiving, etc., have been put out by Lee Mendelson Film Productions since then. And I had the opportunity to interview them, talk about their releases, and they were very kind to send me a preview copy of this Valentine's Day release, which again is out Friday, and obviously, leading up to Valentine's Day in February, at least here in the U.S. I don't know if that's to what extent that's fully an international holiday, or not. So anyway, what to say about this release? I think a couple of things are important to point out. So firstly, this is by the Vince Guaraldi Trio. So some of the soundtracks that have been put out are from a broader, say a bigger band, right, with horns, with flutes, and other things. This is by the Vince Guaraldi Trio, which gives it a little bit of a different feel, but it is also very much a product of its time. So this was originally put out, I want to say, in 1975, and It was recorded in late 1974, but put out in 1975. And so what you have is a very mid 70s sounding group here, despite the fact that it's trio. So how does that exactly materialize? Well, Vince Guaraldi does not just play sort of analog or standard piano here. So he plays piano, electric piano, clavinet, ARP string ensemble, harpsichord, and electric guitar. Then you have Vince Ladiano on drums and auxiliary percussion, and you have Seward McCain on bass. And so how they actually put this album together is by layering tracks. And I think that it comes across, or sort of the result of it, is really, really exciting. So similar to some of the other releases of these soundtracks, they are including a lot of the cues. There's a lot of different versions of sometimes the same song. So most notably Heartburn Waltz. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different versions on side A. So there's 18 tracks on side A. So again, a lot of these are kind of small. They're snippets, they're interludes. It's that kind of thing. But there are a few tracks in here, again, similar to these other soundtracks that have been put out, that are a little bit longer, that that sort of establish themselves a little bit. But know that when you put this on and when you listen to it, you are going to be hearing some of the similar kinds of themes reemerge as the soundtrack goes. On side B, they actually do have again some of the musical snippets that were still included in the special, and then there's also some bonus material that previously hasn't been available. So you will hear a little bit of the banter, in the studio on this. But I think that's part of what makes these releases great, is you get to hear a little bit. You just have a little bit insight, I think, into the process of how these sessions came together in the studio, and sort of that creative process, which I think is just really, really fun to hear. Be My Valentine, Charlie Brown, I think, is probably a special that doesn't perhaps have quite as much nostalgia for a lot of folks, who are used to, call it Christmas, Great Pumpkin, are certainly the top two, right? That people are familiar with. Maybe Thanksgiving is sort of a third in there, but Valentine perhaps not quite as much. Although do know that as these releases are put out, I do believe you can stream each of the specials that correspond with these holidays that we're going through. I think you can stream them on Apple TV, so they are becoming more widely available. Incidentally, this is timed with the 50th anniversary of the special, so 1975. 2025. So they do call this out here, and it's also the first time that we've had the opportunity to actually hear this soundtrack in any other format other than in the special, or I think 1 or 2 of the tracks here have appeared on some type of compilation in the past. So again, being put out this Friday, there's a couple of different color variants. I happen to just have the black vinyl edition, but there are some color variants, as they like to do with these releases. And one other thing that I wanted to point out, because when you have the sons of the producer, the original producer behind these releases, they have a lot of insight. In fact, some of them, I think it's Jason has done the voice of some of the characters in some of these TV specials. And so what's kind of cool is you get these booklets, right, that offer some comments. There's an essay here by Derek Bang, who was a author behind a Vince Guaraldi biography. And then you also have Sean Mendelsohn, who's the producer of this, and obviously son of Lee Mendelsohn, who does sort of the liner notes and talks about the music, because he is a musician himself. So I get a lot of enjoyment from hearing context, hearing about how these sessions came together. And I think that I'm a big fan of each of these releases. I have each of them. Always enjoy talking to Jason and Sean about these releases as well. So so keep an eye out again for Be My Valentine, Charlie Brown, the soundtrack. All right, so a little bit of the state of what's going on in the jazz vinyl hobby for you. Some announcements, like I said, a little bit of controversy with VMP, which just continues to evolve, right? Let's see how all this pans out. I'm not rooting for their demise. I'm simply trying to figure out where's there still releases that I'm interested in. How can I get them without spending more than I have to? That kind of thing. So I'm optimistic for anybody who wants to put out high quality releases. And obviously I'm I'm looking forward to that Blue Note release. We'll see if I end up needing, feeling compelled to get that Max Roach release, and we'll see what happens with some of their exclusives going forward as well. Obviously, we'll bring all of that news to you on this channel at the same time that obviously I like to focus on, on the vintage vinyl experience with this hobby as well. It's just that I have a hard time shying away from some of these topics and these pieces of news when they're either as exciting or as controversial as they are. So that's it for today. Hope I told you something you didn't know beforehand, and I will see you next time.